Let's have a look, guys. Should we go a bit? Okay, let's see. I'll tell you what, I've had some fun time with the PC today. Let's just try again. We're live. Let's give it a go. Hi guys, anyone joining us now? We have had some technical difficulties. I'm just telling everyone. I think we're getting them. Right, we're going to read. Now, we need a few minutes for you guys to come on. Let's have a look. Let's tell Elaine. Okay, right, it's working. Guys, Vincent, Spencer, Elvis Presley, Lorna Brown, Stacy. I come across an interesting video, couple of videos, and I'm going to play them to you whilst I drink my coffee. It gives you guys a chance. Right, are we ready? I love these old tunes.
Welcome to PM Magazine, everybody. I'm Mary Hart, and this is the headquarters of the Completely Elvis Fan Club of Los Angeles. It's been over 3 years since his death.
Let's see if we can get this to work.
Admirers of Elvis's all over the world keep fan clubs like this one alive. Bruce and Stephanie Maltz run this club, and they have a very successful mail order business. On Saturday nights, this room is literally filled with people who also come to see Elvis movies. Amazingly, it almost seems as though Elvis is bigger in death than he was while he was alive. In fact, so much publicity has been done about Elvis over the years that it would seem impossible to find new facts about him. But tonight, in our first story, we're going to reveal a side of Elvis to you that few people have ever seen in depth. His spiritual search for meaning in life. We'll be talking with the man who was Elvis's metaphysical mentor for over 8 years. He was known to the world as the king of rock and roll, and his musical legacy and phenomenal following are unparalleled. There are still thousands of people all over the world who are devoted and active Elvis fan club members. And since his death in August of 1977, at least one book a month has been written about the man Elvis Aaron Presley. One of the most recent and intriguing is this book right here. It's called The Truth About Elvis. And recently I had the opportunity of spending a day with one of its co-authors, a man who for 8 years was Elvis's intimate spiritual advisor and hairdresser, Larry Geller. His name was Elvis Aaron Presley, and he became known as the king of rock and roll. He was famous. He was loved the world over. He was a millionaire. And yet one thing eluded the man who had everything, a sense of purpose. Elvis was spiritually lost. In the search for enlightenment, there's an ancient adage. When the pupil is ready, the teacher will arrive. In 1964, Elvis was ready, and the teacher came in the unlikely form of a young hairdresser named Larry Geller. My first meeting with Larry took place at the now desolate Pan Pacific Auditorium, the site of Elvis's very first Los Angeles concert appearance. We drove there in the Lincoln Continental given to Larry by Elvis just a few weeks before his death.
Well, Barry, this is where I originally met Elvis, back in the early 50s when he first came here. And this was where he came to perform in concert. And I came with my friends. I was 15 years old, and we tried to get inside, and we couldn't. And luckily, we met Elvis at the back door.
Little knowing that 8 years later you would actually be working for the man.
I wouldn't have dreamt that in my wildest dreams. That was too outrageous to even think of.
How did it happen?
Well, it happened this way. I was cutting hair at Sebring. I was cutting Johnny Rivers' hair. And I got the phone call from Alan Fortas, who was one of Elvis's aides, and invited me up to the house. And I went up to Elvis's house in Bel Air, and I gave him his first haircut. We went into the bathroom, and Elvis was telling me that he's just finishing this movie Roustabout with Barbara Stanwyck. And he showed me how he wanted his hair. So I did his hair, which took about 20 to 30 minutes. And after I cut his hair, Elvis asked me about my background. And I told him about my interest in philosophy and parapsychology and religion. And he said, tell me more. And then the conversation got deeper, and we started talking about the meaning of life, the purpose of existence. Why are we here? Where are we going? Where do we come from? And the conversation went on for about 3 or 4 hours, and I told Elvis there's books I could give him. And I told him about a book called The Impersonal Life, which spoke about the inner voice. When I said inner voice, Elvis said, inner voice? What inner voice? I said, well, I'm going to bring you this book tomorrow, and it will explain it better than I could right now. As I was driving home, I thought to myself, my Lord, I'm going to give him The Impersonal Life, which is a very deep spiritual book. And this is before the Reborn movement, before the Beatles and the Gurus, before Scientology, before all that business. So what I'm saying is in those years, it was very different and very strange. And I didn't know how Elvis was going to accept all this. Well, I knew that I had to give him that book. And that's exactly what I did, because I felt, look, here's a man he's an important person, is a beautiful soul, obviously. And the next day, I went to Paramount Studio, and I gave Elvis the book in the morning. By that evening, he read the book, and I came to the room, and he said, Larry, I don't believe that book. This has answered so many things for me. And that's how it all started with Elvis and the books.
This is the Bodhi tree. After that initial meeting with Elvis, Larry Geller spent many hours here searching for various books for Elvis to read.
He read books on all major religions. His favorite book, outside of the Impersonal Life, was the Bible. He was a Christian person, I would say. But he found truth, he found pearls of wisdom in all major religions of the world, from Buddhism, yoga, Sufism, everything. He didn't stop. He was a searcher. And during this time is when Elvis had a tremendous spiritual awakening in the desert. He saw a vision in the clouds, the face of Christ, and that really changed his life. After that, he said, I'm not a believer anymore. I don't have to believe. Now I know, because I was touched. Right after that is when he did his first of his greatest gospel albums, How Great Thou Art. And he, in fact, he won 5 Grammy Awards for gospel albums.
Love it.
Despite
Love
his
it.
successful venture into religious music, Elvis remained dissatisfied with his life and embarrassed over his frivolous film career. The long hours he spent reading and meditating with Larry eventually led to resentment and suspicion among the Memphis entourage of friends and traveling companions.
There was tension, and it built up. And behind Elvis's back, a few of the guys would call me. They would say, "Here comes the Swami. Here comes the mystic. Here comes this. Here comes that." So I decided that I'd have to leave, because if I stayed, it would not be good. I'd be pushing it. It wouldn't be good for me. It wouldn't be good for Elvis. And I knew that if I left, that I would return someday. It's inevitable. The circle would be completed.
Larry and Elvis went their separate ways for 7 years. Then, in 1972, they were happily reunited backstage after one of Elvis's record-breaking Las Vegas engagements.
It was an incredible moment. And we went upstairs, and Elvis and I walked into his suite, and the first thing that I saw were 50 or 60 books on the floor, not new books, all the old books that I gave him, worn and dog-eared and used, all on the floor. And in a moment, I realized, oh my God, he did it. He stayed with it. He's his own man, and he wasn't influenced. And now he knows. That was a beautiful moment when I saw those books.
Do you think Elvis had a premonition of his own death?
It's perfectly clear to me that he did, and he even mentioned it to me and a few other people at various times. And I remember one night, this is a few months before he died, and they mentioned to Kathy Westmoreland, who sang with Elvis. He said, you know, Kathy, I know what some of the people are thinking, what the fans must think. They see me out there, they think I'm fat, but I'll tell you one thing, I'm going to look good in my coffin. And he did. It's hard to describe, but there was a certain peace, and you could see that it was supposed to be this way. It was destiny.
The Elvis memorabilia we just saw came from the archives of the Completely Elvis Fan Club and Ron Furmanek. We would like to thank all of the people involved. Scott will be back in a minute with a look at our PM Magazine departments.
Guys, I love all that the vintage interviews. They're the best. You get the intro music and the music as it goes out. Larry Geller looking very young, happy, confident. So I think my wife's just come back, so it's probably going to start barking, the dogs. But yeah, we had some technical difficulties. I was trying to do a live stream in the car, and it just wasn't going to happen. It's a shame, because sometimes I like to just go out the front of the house, and I have a collection of cars. I wanted to get in them, but it's not going to let me. So I've ended up coming back in the lounge, and I haven't got much time. So I thought what I would do was play some interviews. And I've got one of Priscilla Presley, my dog. Can you see my wife? So I'm going to play you another one. I've really liked it. Now, a big day today, guys. We had a shout out from Ginger Alden. A shout out from Ginger Alden. Come on. How good is that? Who'd have thought 4 months ago that we'd have Mindy Miller, Ginger Alden supporting our channel? Who'd have thought that? Who'd have thought that? Two of Elvis's girlfriends supporting, defending Elvis Presley. They know who I am. They know who Louis Macreadis is. And we've got the bigger channels, people like Presley Malia and Rhonda, and you've got Rare Elvis Photos, you've got Tenderly Loving Elvis, Shauna. You've got the bigger people. They know who we are. They know who we are. I am just so grateful. I have to admit, guys, I'm so grateful that we have been noticed by some important people, important channels. Obviously, we're slowly growing. I think our growth is gradual. Our movement, Team Elvis, our movement together, defending Elvis Presley, it's doing okay. But I tell you now, guys, for Ginger Alden, I've only just started, but let me put something on a minute. I'll come out. Guys, Ginger Alden, to give our channel a shout. Come on, Elvis's last girlfriend. Blows me away. Blows me away. Right, let me put this next video on. Let's have a look. Let's have a peek. Let me find this video. I found a very good. I mean, guys, you got views about. We've all got views about Priscilla Presley, but I want to play this. It's too good. It's too good. It talks about how Elvis met the Beatles. I think it's important that we play this. So, the reason I liked the Larry Geller interview is because I don't want to shy away from the fact that Elvis was very spiritual. Yeah, I think we should show that side of his life. You know, the fact that it meant so much to him that they named the meditation gardens what it was. I really do think Elvis was secretly very proud of his spiritual side and the fact that he was very interested in different religions. Obviously, his heart was with Christianity and the Bible, but he did have a side to him that was searching, and the alternate religions were very important to him. Yeah. So I do want to show that. I do like Larry Geller. Larry Geller is one of the few people that have only ever spoken highly of Elvis. You go back to many, many interviews that Larry's given over the decades, and he's always really been good to Elvis. I think one of Elvis's true, genuine friends. I trust Larry. I don't think Larry once Elvis passed away, just thought, right, how can I make money? No. Larry felt like he lost a friend. Larry has actually messaged me before on Messenger 8 years ago. I think we discussed it a while ago, but I've actually spoken to Larry before, but only on Messenger on Facebook. So I want to play this interview. I'm not sure how long I can hang on for because there's stuff happening in the house, but I just want you guys to know I am a massive supporter of Larry Geller. I really am. And I thank Larry for being such a good friend to Elvis. And this ridiculous situation where they burned Elvis's book, I think, in a well behind Gracelands, and they say that it was because of Priscilla and the Memphis Mafia. The Memphis Mafia didn't seem to like Larry, and I don't think Priscilla liked the fact that Elvis had this side to him that was very spiritual, that wanted to search and learn about different religions. So let's keep listening to this. I'm just going to go and talk to my wife quickly.
There was talk about the Beatles coming to the States in '64. Brian Epstein, knowing how much the Beatles idolized Elvis, admired him, got a hold of Colonel Parker to see if there was any kind of arrangement that could be made, to get them to meet. Everything was quite secretive. Not a big deal was made about it because no one wanted it to get out in the press, especially Colonel Parker, and he would say how, no one could say anything. He waited last minute to tell us all the plans and what was happening. Elvis kind of just went along with the program. I mean, he was looking forward to meeting them. It was in the evening. We were all prepared and ready. The guys didn't want to show too much excitement because, of course, this is Elvis. It's like, oh my God. They were very careful not to overdo it about the Beatles were coming, but they were very excited. What was shocking was that fans were lining up and coming around the gate and knew something was going on, knew the Beatles were coming. And we were going, well, how could this happen? This is all very secretive. All of a sudden, there's like over 100 fans out in front of the gate waiting for them to come. And we learned later that Colonel planned all of that. We just couldn't figure out how they all knew. And Jerry Schilling and I greeted them at the door. And we led them into, kind of showed them around a little bit briefly. And then Elvis was waiting for them in the den. They were so cute. They were so cute. They were so excited, but so nervous. You could hear a pin drop when they walked in. They looked around the room. They came in. They're kind of like looking, and all they cared about was seeing Elvis. They were excited, but holding it back. They wanted to be respectful, but I was amazed at how shy they were. We walked into the room. Elvis was sitting on the couch and got up and said hello. They were speechless. They were totally speechless. They were truly like kids, meeting their idol, especially John Lennon. John was shy, timid, looking at him. I mean, I really believe that he just couldn't believe that he was actually there with Elvis Presley. It was a little bit awkward because they just kept looking at him and not really saying anything and not really sitting down, just staring at him. It felt like it was a long time, but Elvis just said, guys, if you're just going to stand around and stare at me, I might as well just do my own thing. And he grabbed a bass guitar. I heard later that Paul had told Jerry, once he picked up that bass guitar, I knew I was in. And he starts playing, and to Mohe Sam, Charlie Rich was playing on the jukebox. We had a jukebox there at the time with all the latest songs. So, and Elvis used to play over the song itself, so practicing his bass. And he started playing bass, and then that just lightened up the whole evening. And then it was like joking around a little bit after that. I think that Elvis, walked away from that thinking that these were good kids, that they've already sensed, their popularity. But I think that knowing that they were in the States and they were getting a lot of recognition, that he wished them a lot of luck and well-being. Before they left, they invited Elvis to visit the house they were leasing a few days while they were here. And Elvis said, he didn't know what his schedule was, but I do know a couple of the boys went. I think Jerry went. I don't know if Joe went, but I do know that maybe Alan and Richard Davis had gone over. And they came back and said, boy, they were great to hang out with. And that John had said to Jerry, I couldn't believe that he was in front of me. He said, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be here.
I know it's Priscilla Presley, and we have obviously issues with Priscilla that we need to discuss with her because we feel that she needs to apologize for many things. That was a good interview. I like that, the way she describes it. She knows what she's talking about. Now, I definitely, guys, I'm not sure where you are, but I am a Beatles fan. I discovered a Sgt. Pepper's album when I was very young, after Elvis. I think I was around 6, 7. And I played the Sgt. Pepper's album over and over again. She's Leaving Home was one of my favorite songs. Should we just put a clip of it on? Do any of you remember She's Leaving Home? Let's see if I can find. I definitely am a Beatles fan. I just find that the meeting they had. Let's see if I can find it.
The Beatles are synonymous with the swinging 60s, free love and hippie values.
Let me just pause this. We're going to play this as well, but I was going to say that now the Beatles blew me away as well, guys. I'm not sure how many of you growing up through the 50s, not the 50s, the 60s and 70s, how the Beatles affected your life, but they really did affect me. I loved all of their personalities. I would say my favorite was John Lennon. Then it was Paul McCartney, and then George and Ringo. To me, similar. I think Ringo was the funny one, on the drums, and George was the serious, quiet, calm one. And they all came to my hometown, Weston-super-Mare, and there are pictures of the Beatles walking along the seafront in my hometown where I live, and they played in Weston-super-Mare a few times. So, like you guys, I played all their records. I fell in love with their personalities. I loved all their music. I'm a massive Beatles fan. I know that Elvis, they say that Elvis had issues with the Beatles when they came over to America. Now, we know that Elvis's career had been waning a bit. I think Elvis may have seen the Beatles as a bit of a threat. They say that it's possible that he felt that they were, their influence on the teenagers, the youngsters in America. I think Elvis worried that they were encouraging a drug culture. I don't know if that's true, guys. I've read this, I've heard this. Is it true? But from what Priscilla says, he wished them good luck, wished the best for them. Now, they were in awe of Elvis. I think they've met him in one of the other homes. I'm not sure which home it was, one in California, LA. I think they did try to go to Gracelands, but he wasn't home. This is what I heard. So they eventually went to the other home, and by the sounds of it, a couple of them were smoking a bit of pot and they were a bit stoned. We know that John Lennon definitely styled himself on Elvis, and there's many quotes from John Lennon talking about Elvis. I think even his son, I think one of you guys may have sent it me. I'll see if I can find it in a minute. You've got even his son praises Elvis Presley and says that John Lennon, came alive because of Elvis Presley. John Lennon was his decision to become a singer, songwriter, to create this band, the Beatles, came from Elvis. And I think even Paul McCartney was a massive fan of Elvis. Yeah, and still is. There's loads of great interviews of the Beatles talking about Elvis. So whatever we know, there's, whatever differences we think may have happened, some people mention that when Elvis met Nixon, he said something about the Beatles. Do we know if that's true? Don't know, guys. But all I know is the Beatles were great. Elvis was great. Elvis was to me was even greater. But I would say that because I am an Elvis fan. Let's just see what this says. I don't know what this is going to be, so I'll just try it.
The Beatles are synonymous with the swinging 60s, free love and hippie values. But what's often forgotten is that it wasn't until the end of the decade that the counterculture really kicked in. In 1967, Britain was still a largely quiet conservative country, but as the idea of free love spread, teenagers began clashing with their disapproving parents. One teenager who did just that was Melanie Coe. She left home after a row with her parents, and the story was reported in the Daily Mirror. Paul McCartney read the article, and it would inspire him to write a poignant song that would become a classic.
Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins.
43 years after she ran away at 17, we've brought Melanie back to her old family home. What's going through your head that day when you decided to leave? Why can't I just do what I want to do? I didn't think I was being unreasonable to be able to stay out a bit longer than 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But my mother said, no, you've got to go home now. So I did go home, and I just stood in the flat thinking, they're going to be home soon, and there's going to be another fight and screaming and shouting and throwing things around, and I think I'll just leave. I literally threw the minimum amount of stuff in a bag, and I went to that bus stop there, and luckily there was a bus.
Leaving the note that she hoped would say more.
And I did leave a note, yes. But my father said something strange was happening. She'd never leave home because she had everything.
Handkerchief.
Melanie ended up at a flat in Bayswater, central London.
Beating a man from the motor trade.
Her boyfriend wasn't then a man from the motor trade, but amazingly, Paul's lyric was almost right. Well, he was a croupier, but previously, funnily enough, he'd actually worked in the car business. So he was a man from the motor trade, which is the lyric from the song. It's almost telepathic. A few weeks after she left, Melanie's parents tracked her down. I had met them for tea, and that had gone very well. So I gave them this address, and they pulled up here. So I came out, and I was pulled, actually by the hair, I think, into the back of the car. Took me against my will from my love nest. Melanie's adventure was over. 2 months later, She's Leaving Home was released on the seminal Sgt. Pepper album. And Melanie heard it, completely unaware that it was about her.
Standing alone at the top of the stairs.
The hairs on my arms and stood up, and I thought, oh, just a sad song. Oh, almost wanted to cry. In fact, I may have, but no, I hadn't connected it. A couple of years later, Melanie's mother heard an interview with Paul McCartney where he explained the inspiration for the song. She immediately rang Melanie. So I then listened to the words and looked at the words and thought, could it be? Oh, yes. Suddenly, it sort of hit me.
Amazing.
But I just felt sad. Even now, I find it very sad to listen to the song. But in a strange twist of fate, Melanie and McCartney had actually already met. 4 years before storming out of home, Melanie had entered a miming competition on the hit TV show Ready, Steady, Go.
Oh, I love it.
She won, and Paul presented the prize.
Oh, who's it going to be?
I've finished now.
As far as I'm concerned, number 4.
Number 4, Melanie Coe.
Paul McCartney came over and shook my hand and gave me a Beatles album, which was the greatest thing that could happen to any little teenage girl or boy at the time. As well as the excitement of meeting pop stars, in the late 60s, teenagers were learning how to get stroppy with their parents. She's Leaving Home captured exactly what was happening in homes up and down the country. I still love the song, even though it's nearly 50 years
Great
old.
interview. Excellent. Bye bye. Brilliant. Ah,
We've had some great.
I love that. Do you know what? I didn't even know that was going to say that. That actually has completely surprised me. I did not know that story. What a brilliant interview and such a beautiful song. So I can't stay, guys. I've got to go. But I just want to say, I think many of us here on Defending Elvis Presley have had our lives altered because of the Beatles. The Beatles. We do, we love Elvis like a friend. But I would say the Beatles also had this, one of the very few bands that have ever existed that actually, after listening to them and watching them and seeing them, changed who we were, changed us on the inside, connected with our soul. I really believe that. Elvis and the Beatles. Elvis, obviously, for me, is my number one love. But Beatles, amazing. I'd love to do lots of videos about the Beatles, and I probably will do some more, but it will always relate back to Elvis somehow. But they're amazing. They're amazing. And I'm so proud to have always been a Beatles fan. And I think that Elvis really respected the Beatles. I really do. And I think the Beatles really respected Elvis. And they had a mutual love for each other. And only the Beatles and Elvis really know what it was like to have that level of fame. That level of fame around the world. And they literally completely changed the world. Completely changed. The world was never the same again after the Beatles, after Elvis Presley. And how many people can say that? How many famous people can truly say that? I know they had their differences. I understand that. But life-altering, worldwide phenomenons, the Beatles, Elvis. And I pay homage to, I'm so pleased they did meet, and they had a jam. And one of them, I think George boasts about that they had a spliff with the Memphis Mafia, not Elvis. And Elvis and John would jam together. And I've heard that they went off and partied with the Memphis Mafia, a couple of the Beatles guys. But I also heard that John Lennon carried on visiting Elvis for months after that meeting, for months after. And Colonel Tom Parker made it very clear that he didn't want it to be photoed or filmed. And this is why we have almost no pictures of Elvis meeting the Beatles. I think there might be one of them arriving in a limousine. And so that was because of Colonel Tom Parker. And I think even Elvis didn't really want pictures taken. He wanted it to be quite private. I think Jerry Schilling might have been there. I'm pretty sure Priscilla was there. So I thought I'd just cover a short video. I have to go now, guys. So I'm going to send you all love. I'm going to try and come back on later. I'm not sure if I can. But we still need to read chapter 13 of Elvis and Me. So we are going to try and come back and read this. But I've had a busier day than expected today. Things haven't all gone to plan today. But I did wanted to jump in, do a quick half an hour chat with you guys, and go through a couple of bits, mention Larry Geller, and I really like Larry Geller, talk about Elvis and the Beatles. Job done. Take care, guys. We're out of here. Thanks very much. Sending you all love.